In the early years of World War II, the United States Army Air Forces believed in a dangerous myth that black men lacked the intelligence, discipline, and courage to fly combat aircraft. Official reports questioned their mental capacity, while senior officers openly stated that African Americans were better suited for ground labor than for the cockpit. This belief was not hidden, it was written into policy, reinforced by segregation, and defended by tradition. Yet the war created pressure. America needed pilots, and civil rights leaders demanded opportunity. Reluctantly, the Army approved an experimental program in Tuskegee, Alabama, not to prove black pilots could succeed, but to confirm they would fail. Resources were limited, expectations were low, and scrutiny was relentless. Every mistake would be used as evidence that the experiment itself was flawed. The men who arrived at Tuskegee understood this unspoken truth. They trained knowing they were not just learning to fly, they were on trial for their entire race. Instructors doubted them. Commanders watched closely. Even fellow American pilots dismissed them as political tokens. Still, the trainees endured outdated aircraft, harsh discipline, and constant psychological pressure. What emerged from Tuskegee was not failure, but resolve. The pilots forged an identity built on precision, professionalism, and unity. When they painted the tails of their P-51 Mustangs red, it was more than a marking. It was a declaration. They would be seen. They would be remembered. Born from discrimination and doubt, the Tuskegee Airmen, later known as the Red Tails, did not ask for lowered standards. They demanded the chance to meet the highest ones. And when they finally entered the skies over Europe, they carried more than bombs and bullets. They carried the weight of history, determined to rewrite it at 30,000 feet. When the Red Tails first entered the European theater, the Luftwaffe pilots regarded them with barely concealed amusement. Reports filtered through German intelligence that the American unit was composed entirely of black aviators. In an era steeped in racist ideology on both sides, this revelation seemed absurd to them. Many German pilots assumed these men had been thrown into combat as a political experiment, rather than a legitimate military force. Early encounters reinforced their assumptions. The Red Tails flew smaller formations, often sticking close to bombers rather than seeking aggressive dogfights. To seasoned Luftwaffe aces, this cautious approach was interpreted as timidity, a sign of inexperience. Propaganda reports in German newspapers and radio broadcasts exaggerated the notion that these pilots would be easy prey, blackbirds without bite, some scoffed. However, this mockery overlooked the careful discipline behind the Red Tails' methods. Their primary mission was bomber escort, and every maneuver, every defensive tactic had been drilled to perfection in Tuskegee. Yet the Germans, unfamiliar with the unit's training regimen, misread defensive positioning as incompetence. This underestimation became a critical vulnerability for the Luftwaffe. Even among German pilots who respected skill, there was a prevailing disbelief that African Americans could match the tactical precision and courage of white pilots. They dismissed reports of aerial victories as exaggerations. In the first few missions, the Red Tails suffered minor losses, further encouraging the derision. But the mocking tone, the casual assumptions of failure, sowed a dangerous overconfidence among German pilots. Little did they know that beneath the paint of their red-tailed Mustangs, a cadre of disciplined, highly trained aviators was quietly perfecting the tactics that would soon earn them both fear and respect in the skies of Europe. At Tuskegee, Alabama, the airfield was more than a training ground. It was a crucible. The men who arrived were among the few African Americans selected from thousands of applicants, chosen not only for aptitude, but for extraordinary determination. From the moment they stepped onto the tarmac, they were confronted with a regimen designed to test both skill and character. Days began before sunrise with physical drills that pushed the body to its limits. Instructors demanded precision in every task, from marching to aircraft maintenance, leaving no room for error. Flying lessons were rigorous. Basic maneuvers, navigation exercises, and simulated combat sorties became progressively more complex. Pilots trained in the North American At-6 Texan before moving to more advanced aircraft, including the P-40 Warhawk and eventually the P-51 Mustang. Each stage was designed to ensure mastery under pressure. Discipline was ironclad. Mistakes were met with correction, and the mental stakes were higher than the physical ones. The men understood that failure could be interpreted not as personal, but as racial confirmation of prejudice. They trained not only to fly, but to withstand skepticism, mockery, and the constant scrutiny of superiors who doubted their abilities. Yet this pressure forged resilience. Pilots developed razor-sharp focus, split-second decision-making, and unshakable confidence in themselves and each other. Bonds formed in the heat of drills and simulated emergencies would later become essential in combat. By the time the Red Tails graduated, they were not just skilled aviators. They were warriors tempered by discipline, capable of facing both the enemy in the sky and the prejudice on the ground. Tuskegee was harsh, demanding, and unyielding, but it created the foundation for a unit whose courage and professionalism would soon defy every expectation placed upon them. In June 1943, the Red Tails finally left the training grounds of Tuskegee and arrived in North Africa, poised for their first combat missions over Europe. These initial sorties were more than flights. They were tests of endurance, skill, and nerves under fire. The young pilots faced unfamiliar skies, harsh weather, and the ever-present threat of experienced Luftwaffe pilots who had been fighting for years. Their early missions primarily involved escorting unarmed bombers. The task seemed straightforward, but the stakes were immense. One misstep could cost dozens of lives, and every maneuver had to be executed with precision. For many of the pilots, it was their first real encounter with enemy aircraft. The adrenaline was intense, and mistakes could be fatal. Some P-40s were damaged or lost, yet the men learned quickly, refining their formations, communication, and defensive tactics. These first battles also exposed the pilots to the harsh realities of war. Engines failed, ammunition ran low, and the deafening roar of machine guns and anti-aircraft fire became routine. But even in the chaos, the Red Tails demonstrated extraordinary cohesion. They protected the bombers, coordinated attacks, and began earning the respect of Allied forces. By the end of their initial missions, the pilots had already begun to shed the doubts cast upon them at home and by enemy forces. Each successful escort, each evasive maneuver, became a quiet victory against the prejudice that had followed them from Alabama. The Red Tails' early experiences in Europe were trials by fire, not only proving their ability as aviators, but also laying the groundwork for a legacy that would inspire generations. Though small in number, their courage in these first missions signaled the arrival of a force that would soon challenge both the Luftwaffe and the racial biases of the era. One of the defining principles of the Red Tails was simple but uncompromising: never leave a bomber behind. This rule, drilled into every pilot at Tuskegee, became both their mission and their mantra in the skies over Europe. While other fighter groups sometimes broke off to chase enemy planes, the Red Tails remained steadfast, circling above and around the vulnerable bombers with unwavering focus. The strategy was dangerous. Flying in tight formations required split-second timing, constant communication, and unrelenting vigilance. A single lapse could allow enemy fighters to breach the formation and destroy the bombers below. Yet, abandoning the escort to pursue personal kills was never an option. The Red Tails understood that the lives of bomber crews and the success of the Allied bombing campaigns depended on their discipline. This approach required both skill and courage. Pilots learned to anticipate enemy attacks, to fly defensively while remaining offensive, and to rotate positions seamlessly within the formation. They mastered high-speed maneuvers that balanced protection and aggression, often drawing enemy fire onto themselves to shield the bombers. Each mission tested their training, judgment, and endurance to the extreme. Over time, this disciplined strategy proved remarkably effective. Bombers escorted by the Red Tails suffered significantly fewer losses than those left unprotected, earning the squadron a reputation for reliability and precision. Enemy pilots, initially mocking the Red Tails, began to recognize that their red-tailed P-51s were relentless, intelligent, and strategically disciplined. The never leave a bomber behind rule was more than a tactical directive, it was a moral code. It symbolized the Red Tails' commitment to duty, to each other, and to the men whose lives depended on them. In the skies of Europe, their steadfastness became a shield, a symbol of courage, and the foundation of a legacy that would endure long after the war ended. By late 1943, the Luftwaffe began to notice a change in the skies over Europe. The Red Tails, once dismissed as inexperienced and timid, were proving remarkably effective in protecting bombers and engaging enemy aircraft. Reports of lost German planes and failed interception attempts began circulating through German command, forcing even the skeptics to reconsider their assumptions. The turning point came in repeated missions over Italy and Germany, where the Red Tails' disciplined formations and precise tactics frustrated seasoned German pilots. Their ability to maintain close escort, anticipate attacks, and execute coordinated counterattacks demonstrated a level of skill previously unrecognized. Enemy fighters found themselves outmaneuvered and often forced into retreat. The very unit once mocked as a political experiment was now a feared opponent. German pilots began to respect the Red Tails, acknowledging that they were not merely following orders, but applying intelligent strategy in real-time combat. The combination of rigorous Tuskegee training, teamwork, and unwavering focus allowed the Red Tails to hold the advantage even against superior numbers. Their red-tailed P-51 Mustangs became a symbol of persistent aerial dominance, inspiring caution where mockery had once prevailed. This shift in perception was more than symbolic. Luftwaffe commanders adjusted their tactics, instructing pilots to approach the Red Tails with more caution and to avoid direct engagement whenever possible. The initial underestimation had turned into genuine concern, validating the men's training and discipline. For the Red Tails, every successful escort and victory over enemy aircraft was not only a military achievement, but a quiet triumph over the prejudice and doubt that had shadowed them from the beginning. In the eyes of both allies and adversaries, the Red Tails had emerged from skepticism to superiority, rewriting the narrative of. As the Red Tails gained experience and confidence in European skies, a new phenomenon emerged: the rise of American aces among their ranks. Pilots like Lee Archer, Charles Dryden, and Edward Buddy Pugh began accumulating multiple aerial victories, turning the once experimented unit into a powerhouse of skill and courage. Their achievements were not merely personal triumphs. They were proof that the Tuskegee training had created aviators capable of matching and surpassing their seasoned enemies. Day after day, mission after mission, the Red Tails demonstrated remarkable consistency. Their tight formations, disciplined escort techniques, and precise gunnery allowed them to engage Luftwaffe fighters effectively while minimizing losses among the bombers. Stories circulated of pilots downing multiple enemy planes in a single sortie, often while simultaneously shielding vulnerable aircraft from attack. Each engagement reinforced their reputation and boosted the morale of Allied crews who began to request Red Tail escorts specifically. These victories had strategic impact as well. German pilots learned to fear the red-tailed P-51s, adjusting their tactics to avoid confrontation. Within the U.S. Army Air Forces, the growing number of Tuskegee aces challenged long-held prejudices and skepticism, proving that African-American pilots could excel at the highest levels of aerial combat. The consecutive successes forged not only skilled fighters, but leaders who inspired their peers. They mentored younger pilots, shared tactics, and instilled a culture of precision and courage. By the end of 1944, the Red Tails had accumulated a remarkable record: hundreds of successful bomber escort missions, dozens of confirmed kills, and a legacy of resilience and excellence that would resonate far beyond the war. Through each hard-won victory, the Red Tails turned ridicule into respect and doubt into admiration, cementing their place among the most formidable fighter units of World War II. By 1944, the Red Tails had earned a fearsome reputation across the European skies. German pilots, who once mocked them as inexperienced and easy prey, began to approach missions with caution. Intelligence reports from the Luftwaffe indicated unusually high losses when engaging the red-tailed P-51s, and veteran pilots started recommending avoidance of direct confrontation whenever possible. The psychological shift was evident. The Red Tails were no longer seen as a minor nuisance, but as a strategic threat. This caution manifested in radio communications. Luftwaffe pilots altered their chatter, issuing warnings and sharing intelligence about red tail formations. Calls became more hesitant, with phrases like, "Avoid the Black Mustangs" and "Red tails on our six" echoing across airwaves. These subtle changes reflected the growing respect and fear of a unit that had, only months earlier, been dismissed as unproven. Even tactical plans shifted. German commanders began rerouting fighter sweeps, flying at higher altitudes, or attacking in larger formations to offset the Red Tail's superior escort skills. The once confident Luftwaffe, accustomed to dominating Allied bombers, now faced a unit whose coordination and discipline could outmaneuver them in almost any engagement. The Red Tails themselves were aware of the change. Pilots noticed that German fighters hesitated, that ambushes were less frequent, and that enemy formations rarely broke through. Each mission reinforced the effectiveness of their training and the value of their "never leave a bomber behind" doctrine. This shift in behavior was more than tactical, it was symbolic. It marked the moment when the Red Tails had fully transitioned from a unit doubted by both enemies and allies into one commanding fear, respect, and strategic influence. The airwaves that once carried scorn now transmitted caution, a testament to the skill, courage, and legacy of Tuskegee's finest aviators. One of the most remarkable achievements of the Red Tails was the protection of the bombers they escorted. Throughout hundreds of missions across Europe, numerous bomber crews reported returning unscathed thanks to the vigilance and discipline of the Tuskegee pilots. The statistics were striking. Red Tail units flew over 1,500 combat sorties and escorted more than 200 bomber missions, with a documented record showing significantly fewer bomber losses compared to missions without their protection. These numbers were more than just statistics. They represented lives saved, crews kept intact, and missions completed successfully. The Red Tail's precision in formation flying, their ability to anticipate enemy attacks, and their refusal to abandon any bomber created a level of reliability that set them apart from other fighter groups. Each undamaged bomber was a testament to the men's training, courage, and unyielding commitment to their mission. Beyond the numbers, the Red Tail's performance had tangible effects on the Allied war effort. Sustained bomber campaigns against strategic targets in Germany and occupied Europe were more effective, as crews could operate with the confidence that elite fighter escorts would shield them from Luftwaffe attacks. Enemy forces began to recognize the Red Tails as formidable adversaries, adjusting tactics and demonstrating respect that had once been unimaginable. The unit's legacy is preserved not only in the official records, but in the memories of those who flew alongside them. Every bomber that returned intact, every Luftwaffe plane downed, and every mission completed contributed to a broader narrative that African American aviators, forged under prejudice and rigorous training, could achieve extraordinary results in the highest stakes theaters of war. The Red Tail's statistical and operational record remains a clear testament to their enduring impact on World War II history. The story of the Red Tails is one of triumph over prejudice as much as over enemy forces. Initially ridiculed by German pilots and doubted by their own military, the Tuskegee Airmen transformed skepticism into respect through discipline, skill, and courage. Their red-tailed P-51 Mustangs became a symbol not just of aerial excellence, but of resilience against systemic discrimination. Over time, both allies and adversaries came to recognize their achievements, marking a historic reversal of perception. The Red Tail's success challenged long-standing racial biases within the U.S. military. Their exemplary performance in bomber escort missions, air-to-air combat, and strategic planning demonstrated conclusively that African Americans could excel at the highest levels of aviation. These accomplishments contributed to the eventual desegregation of the U.S. Armed Forces, a landmark decision in 1948 that acknowledged the injustice of previous policies and honored the capabilities and sacrifices of the Tuskegee Airmen. Beyond military recognition, their story offers lessons that resonate today. It underscores the importance of opportunity, training, and support in unlocking human potential, and illustrates how perseverance and integrity can overcome deeply ingrained prejudice. The Red Tail's journey reminds us that merit and courage should define reputation, not race or background. Their legacy endures in aviation, military history, and civil rights. Museums, documentaries, and commemorative events continue to celebrate the Red Tails, ensuring that their heroism remains part of the public consciousness. From mockery to respect, the Tuskegee Airmen forged a path that transformed attitudes, saved countless lives during the war, and set an enduring example of courage, professionalism, and justice that continues to inspire new generations around the world.